All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to Office Hours. It's July or June 24th, 2020. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator. That means we help you own your infrastructure in record time by building it with you and then showing you the ropes. If that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post a video recording of this session to the Office Hours channel, as well as follow up with an email so you can share it with your team. Well, with that said, let's kick things off. I got a couple announcements first to make, some following up from last week. First is that, Cloud Posse, we have seen an incredible uptick in traction in our modules. I was just looking the other day, and the number of modules that have over 100 stars and receiving tens of thousands of instantiations is enormous. But it's also put a lot of pressure on us to review pull requests, and we've slowed down a little bit. I hate that. So I want to speed that up again. So to do that, we've launched kind of a private group of volunteer contributors, people who are big-time contributors to our modules, to help accelerate, first of all, their pull requests, but also other community pull requests. So if you've been contributing a lot to Cloud Posse and you want to be part of our contributors program, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to have your help in reviewing some pull requests from the community. So last week we brought up that Amazon announced a much anticipated or requested feature, which is the automatic instance refreshes for auto scaling. We talked that a PR was already open for that in Terraform. I just checked back this morning. Looks like it was approved 4 days ago. I didn't check to see if it was approved by somebody that matters, but at least it looks like it's mostly ready to go, and hopefully will be merged at some point soon. Terraform 0.13 dropped this week. I believe that was on 6/17. So things are heating up. They tend to move fast as soon as the betas come out. So I think everyone should be prepared that modules might not all be compatible with 0.13 in a very simple, idiotic kind of way. And there's an actual talking point on my next slide. I want to get everyone else's feedback on it, but that is related to version pinning. So when 0.12 came along, we got bit pretty hard by that with over 100 repos that we had to update and migrate to that. Now that was a big change. That was like a language change, HCL1 to HCL2. Now with 0.13, it's not really a language change. There's some new functionality like being able to loop over modules, which is a highly requested feature. But we've started pinning Terraform versions everywhere. So that means out of the box, our modules are not going to be compatible with 0.13 until they've been tested. So we'll talk about that some more in a follow-up talking point to this announcement. The other thing is, after the call today, we're going to do a kind of informal just walkthrough on the Cloud Posse testing infrastructure for Terraform. This is geared a little bit to our contributors, just to get them more up to speed, but anyone can join. What we'll do is we'll just tag it on to Office Hours today. So if you can stick around for an extra half hour, 45 minutes, or whatever it takes after that, please do so. So I'll try and remind everyone towards the end that we're doing this walkthrough as well. All right, let's get into the talking points then. Let's see here. So yeah, the goal today, as always, is to get your questions answered. We had a few good questions pop up in the Office Hours Slack channel. I do want to get to those. First, I'm going to be a little bit selfish just to get other people's input on my question here. We're of the pretty strong mindset these days that version pinning is absolutely necessary. But it introduces some of these pain points, especially when you have hundreds of repositories you got to update. So is Terraform version pinning and provider pinning good or bad? Do you do it? And if not, why? And if you do, why? And are you going to continue? Andrew, I think you have some thoughts on this.
Have I gained that reputation?
I don't mean to call you out. I know you were one of the few that spoke up about it earlier. And just while you're talking, I'll bring up an example of what I'm talking about, what we're doing, so it's less opaque for those that maybe haven't been practicing it. So if we look at our versions.tf, in all of our projects, we have this file, and it defines some loose version pinning on the providers and the Terraform version. So this is what our tests are running against and what we've tested against. So as 0.13 drops, you'll see that this is going to be a problem. We're going to have to add versions that are supported to the required version, assuming that it works out of the box. I think what I like about this is that it's explicit and that it has helped with stability, because new versions of providers are dropping frequently, and those can break module compatibility in odd ways.
What's sad is I do have opinions about it.
All right.
I have opinions about just about everything, which my teammates will attest to. 100% yes to the pinning. I'm going to keep doing it. It's worth a little bit of pain when we migrate to avoid the potential issues that not pinning brings up.
So do you think we're pinning strictly enough here? Should we be pinning even more strict?
No, I think that is strictly enough.
Yeah. And my other concern is just like, the impact to our community and to the thousands and thousands of companies using our modules, and the impact of this is that it's going to be slightly delayed. So just curious to get any feedback from other people using our Terraform code, if you've thought about this or
I think Cloud Posse is in an interesting situation here, though. Like not everybody has 200 open source Terraform modules, and I think what we should do is update it so that it's 0.12 inclusive and 13 inclusive.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't seem like 13 is going to be breaking. Like if this was, we were updating 11, I would say, hey, branch it. Yeah. Like you did for 11, which was a good call. But for 13, it's probably like do one that's a greater than 0.12, and
less than 0.14.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I was going to say that next. If we test and discover that it runs fine with no changes on 12 and 13, then do exactly what Matt just said. Yeah. Make it so that it's greater than or equal to 12.0 and less than 14.
Well, which begs the question, should we be doing matrix builds where we're testing the same one on 0.12 and 0.13?
It's not crazy considering GitHub Actions are free.
Yeah.
I mean, you could.
It just slows things down.
Certainly could.
But it slows things down.
Yeah. Slows things down.
With 12, it was immediately obvious that what worked in 11 would not work in 12.
Yeah.
Immediately. It feels like 13 will not be the same paradigm shift.
Yeah. More like all the upgrades previous to 0.12 were more or less painless.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's good. I don't want to beat a dead horse on that. Just wanted to get the word out there for folks eager about 0.13 to drop that we have some work ahead of us. All right. Next question. Tips and tricks. First of all, I don't think Muahahaha is in the channel or on the call today. Are you? All right. So maybe let's get to that one later on, since it won't be really an interactive conversation. The question was kind of about tips and tricks for doing CI/CD in a mono repos where you want to do strategic builds based on what changes, and then triggering dependencies for that. And it's a nightmare. I think this is one tool. Bazel was created to help monorepo builds. Make isn't still that ideal for it because it's all based on timestamps, and Git doesn't preserve timestamps. So doing incremental updates with that isn't that good. So you need to factor in basically what happens in the pull request. The files changed reported in the pull request needs to be one of the factors. You can also calculate that from Git by comparing against the master branch, but it gets messy real quick. Anyways, I don't want to talk about it too much. It is something that has come up for us a number of times, and we'd be happy to talk about it if somebody else has thoughts on it. Anybody want to add anything to that question, high level? So tricks for CI/CD and monorepos. All right. Next question by Chunan. You're on the call, right?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. So this is kind of rehashing a little bit of a question you brought up before, but I have some more information to add to it. Maybe others have some more information to add to it. Let me read your question in the office hours channel here. Your question was, I'd like to resurface an old question since we have some updates. We have some asynchronous tasks, maybe around 20 or so. Some of them run at odd hours in the middle of the night, and some of them can take up to 20 minutes to run. I want to get super alerted if something doesn't run or fails to run. Looking for advice on dashboarding versus alerting. Currently, the team has been trained to keep a close eye on Sentry alerts that come in from their Slack. We had email alerts from AWS in the past, but the team got tuned out. Yeah, that's a alert satiety, happens all the time, especially with emails. We're trying a few things to get basic monitoring set up, looking for a general validation. So the asynchronous tasks are running on Celery, and it's set up with APM, so Application Performance Monitoring for Celery, and then create monitors in Datadog. Use Datadog custom metrics, basically a version of StatsD. Use Datadog support, Datadog support staff recommends building a Lambda function and crawling the log, build a custom agent through Datadog. Sounds overly complicated to me in the end on what you're trying to achieve. The red flag to me is getting into this part of writing a custom Lambda and then the debt of managing that. Now, this sounds like also something that's pretty intrinsic to your business. So maybe you need to have that, the complexity associated with that in terms of getting other custom metrics out. But if we're going to the original ask, which is really being alerted when a deadline is exceeded, what we're talking about are heartbeats. So we need to have a deadline escalation when the heartbeat isn't received. And I think there's simpler ways of getting that done.
Yeah, that's really the core, because there is something very specific about running certain tasks on the dot. So if we have tasks that are running a little bit slower due to CPU credit depletion or just not enough resources, high CPU load, whatever, right? Then that could introduce additional problems when we process these things, because they do update databases at the end.
So is it fair to say we can say it's a little hard when we're talking generally speaking about the task and without them, but is it fair to say you can set with each one of your tasks, you can set a deadline for when the next execution must have completed? So if you have a task running every 24 hours, it must have completed within 25 hours, assuming it's permitted to take up to an hour.
Yeah, we can definitely set parameters around that.
So then the sidebar is that we've talked previously on this. I don't believe you have a formal escalation, like alert management escalation platform in place where you're at right now, right? You're relying mostly on Datadog and Sentry, but you don't have any way of managing the escalations, right?
That's right. And right now we're just relying on Slack to get,
Yeah.
you know, to get it to everybody's face.
Which is better than nothing and is a great way to avoid yak shaving and to get started. But quickly, Slack becomes the same thing of email where it's just overloaded. So you like having multiple mediums for alerts is not a bad idea, but you need to be able to separate the signal from the noise. And the problem also with a lot of the Slack notifications is most of them don't have concepts of acknowledgement, where you can say, hey, okay, good, yeah, we should fix this, but I can't get to it right now. Remind me in, you know, an hour, again, if this is still a problem, right? So that's what you get with escalations. Or the ability to say, well, Steve didn't respond to this within, you know, 20 minutes. Let's escalate it to Mike and have him look into it. And that's what you don't get with Slack. That's what you don't get with primitive email alerting. That's why you need alert escalation.
Yep,
So,
totally get it.
yeah, so I can show you very quickly, because this is something I've set up recently for something that we do. Well, for everyone that knows, you know, we have archive.suiteops.com, first of all. This is a record of every message at SuiteOps since the beginning of time. So you can search our archives for what you're looking on for. This is searchable by Algolia and all that other jazz. But the key thing here is this is a fully static site that's generated and uploaded to S3. We generate this site once a day. So if we go to githubcloudposse.com/Slack archive, now this is a private repo, one of the few we have in open source because honestly it's garbage behind the hood and I don't want you to see it. But let's look at the pipeline that deploys this. In this case, it's being deployed by CodeFresh. This runs on a cron job. So if we look at this pipeline, so the cron triggers for this happen to be configured on CodeFresh, but the key thing here is this runs every 24 hours. What I need though to make sure is that I get a notification when that pipeline doesn't run. So what am I? Sorry. So I was looking at the wrong pipeline. So anyways, this is the pipeline, and the last step of the pipeline is to send a ping to OpsGenie. So OpsGenie is, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not the word. It's mutually compatible with Datadog. That's not the expression. How you say it? It's additive or complementary. That's the word. So OpsGenie, PagerDuty are complementary to having something like Sentry or Datadog. But there's some differences in what they offer. I don't believe PagerDuty, for example, offers the ability to do heartbeats, but OpsGenie does. So in this pipeline, looks like your standard pipelines. You know, we build the Docker image, we build the static site, we rebuild the indexes for Algolia, and then we deploy all of that. And then we invalidate the Cloudflare cache, and the last step is to notify OpsGenie that this pipeline has been successful. So
in the case when it's not successful, does it also get notified? Do you also?
That's the thing. You don't need, yeah. And so this is what we're talking about, deadlines or heartbeats. So what we're doing is we're sending a heartbeat. You can send that heartbeat however often you need, and you can create as many heartbeats as you want to get, why don't I hate it when they, when sites optimize the entire experience for selling you and you can't even figure out how to log in again. There we go. Got to go search my history. All right, so we got to go here to, in this case, I'm going to go to Teams. I'm going to go to Cloud Posse. I'm going to go to Heartbeats. So here's the heartbeat I created. And you see that the last heartbeat was received on June 23rd. and it's going to expire on June 25th. Now, this is one heartbeat. Now, if you have 25 cron tabs or like celery beat jobs, you'd have 25 services or heartbeats here. And each one of those is going to send a ping when it finishes. Then you can set up a policy. What happens when that doesn't trigger? And this is the whole thing of what you get when you have a tool like OpsGenie or PagerDuty. Basically, you can then escalate that message based on various criteria. It can be based on time of day. So don't send a page between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. for these services, but do it during business hours. But these other services, you might need to actually get woken up in the middle of the night. Then you can actually escalate that. Plus, it goes across mediums, so they're going to get a notification on their phone if they have OpsGenie installed, or you can escalate to phone calls. You can call, their wife. No, not recommending that. And you can do, any kind of escalation that you need to do. Does it make sense, Chanan?
Yeah, it does. I'm just curious if there is something similar on Datadog. We are new to Datadog too, and I have read some references to heartbeat on Datadog, something about status check.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's even equivalent.
Either way, though, that it's a one-off solution. Then, like what I like about here's the thing is you have a lot of signals that you got to separate from the noise. Like you have AWS account notifications, you have billing notifications, you got Let's Encrypt notifications, you got ACM notifications, you have, in this case, maybe the heartbeats. There are all these different signals and they won't all make it into Datadog, chances are. So having a system that exists outside of that is advantageous so that you have a way to escalate in general when you have problems. Now, because escalation is a complicated beast in and of itself, including on-call schedules, handoffs, acknowledgements, re-acknowledgements, etc. This is why separate products exist just for escalation. And pretty much every monitoring platform out there has integrations with Datadog, PagerDuty, VictorOps, Big Panda, or whatever all the different ones are. And it's for that reason, because escalation is a product in and of itself.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah. Anybody have anything to add to their SRE experiences and alert escalation and monitoring, or Chanan's question?
The only thing I would have added was, with the tools like PagerDuty, and I'm not familiar with OpsGenie, but I assume it can do the same thing. You have the concept of passing the pager around. If you're the one getting woken up every night at 2 a.m. when things are going wrong, you're gonna just shut it off, because you get what's the term for it? It's alert fatigue, right?
Yeah.
You need to get your team involved, and you guys need to have a pager rotation. It's okay. Who's got the pager tonight? Oh, Jerry does. Or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can't really do that with Datadog or Grafana or whatever. But with something like PagerDuty, that's like part of their functionality. It's like that's just no problem.
So, and this is just a test account here. So, I wouldn't pay any what's the word? Value to this. But the other nice thing is you can kind of see your metrics at a glance for escalating. So you can see if you have problems in your setup. Here you can see, because we've been recently, we just recently turned on the spigot. We had a lot of GitHub notifications coming from our bot account coming into this. So that's why we saw this explosion here. But this is the kind of thing you'll be able to get a grip on, is your signal to noise ratio. You want this to be really, really low.
That's cool. Thank you for the demo.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Let's see here. Next question on the docket. Best practices for running Terraform infrastructure tests. And this is by you, Andrew. Now, you have some additional context to this in your question. I just summarized in one sentence here. Do you want to add or reframe it?
So my entire CI pipeline runs in containers in Kubernetes, but there's one particular tool that I need to run for a security scan called OpenSCAP that we just have had the hardest time getting to run in a container. And we just, I've spent multiple days on it and just not working. So we ended up creating some Terraform code to create an EC2 instance running CentOS atomic host, and it runs the scan. We pull the report that it generates out, and then we destroy the EC2 instance. And so it's the pipeline is running Terraform apply, and then some SSH commands, and then Terraform destroy. And
EC2 plugin with Jenkins, so it spins up the node as necessary. Well, no, actually, this is what.
No, it's the Kubernetes plugin.
Yeah, well, yeah. They're not mutually exclusive though, and this has actually come up for us recently in something that we're working on. For example, so Jenkins, this is a whole separate conversation, and stay tuned, everyone. We're gonna have a whole special office hours on just running Jenkins under Kubernetes and all the pitfalls associated with that.
Yeah,
but another pitfall is you can't run Docker Compose under Kubernetes with Jenkins. So
yeah, okay.
So these things come up, and you have options. Two options come to mind immediately that I would pursue probably before I'd pursue the current route taken. I would pursue first using either the EC2 slave plugin, or I don't know what it's called right now, or the code build plugin for Jenkins. So this gives you the ultimate escape hatch to still run virtual machines under Jenkins in the old-fashioned way that are ephemeral, that are managed by Jenkins and shut down afterwards. And then your pipelines can run more or less the same on that instance or that node. So then you can have a more traditional Jenkins pipeline that doesn't run in a container, that runs the steps in that node and performs those tests. And hopefully that would eliminate the problems you had.
That is a good suggestion. I will definitely take a look at it. I am more interested right now in talking about general practices, not necessarily something that's specifically for Jenkins.
Yeah.
If you are automatically running something like Terraform destroy, what are some things that you do to make sure that everything is cleaned up properly in case something goes wrong?
I think that just to jump in, and I think, Eric, you just spun up the GitHub action that does it really quickly, which is nice. But AWS Nuke is a good, if it's a small environment it's only for certain environments because it's going to destroy all the things you've got in there unless you specifically call them out. AWS Nuke would be a good thing on top of run in your CI environment for testing to run on a schedule that basically allows you to then keep that environment clean. If your Terraform destroy is going to be breaking every once in a while, then AWS Nuke can come through after the fact to just wash away the dirt and grime that kind of piles up, and then you're good to go.
This has been my realization recently. So first and foremost, we should make our Terraform code perfect. It should always be clean when it destroys. And then you have these edge cases that we've encountered in Terraform testing that just aren't addressed. So the big problem for us has been using elastic IPs in our Terraform tests. When you destroy that resource, it's not destroying the elastic IP. So we were quickly exhausting our elastic IPs in our account. So after much frustration around this, as well as S3 buckets not getting cleaned up for whatever reason, we just gave up on trying to fix every situation like that and bit the bullet, implemented AWS Nuke. This was, kind of Matt Gowie prodded me to take a look at it again. and I implemented. So it's really easy. Here's the GitHub action that I set up, passing in the GitHub token so we can clone the repo, the access keys to AWS Nuke. I'm running the official Docker image by Rebuy for AWS Nuke, pinned to a version, running on a cron tab nightly. I have this just commented out for testing. So if I want to test that this is working, I can just uncomment that. And then under for the configuration for AWS Nuke, this is what took me the longest. Maybe I did something wrong here, but I just wanted to be explicit. So first of all, I know that this is never going to run in other credentials. So this is a required parameter, so I just set it. But then I went through and identified every resource that we care about, and then filter for all the resources that we should never delete, and then it's going to delete the inverse of that. I don't know if AWS Nuke is, I mean, if you're doing anything automatic with destroys in Terraform, it might be a consideration.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to be able to do that. I just don't have a empty account that I can.
So it doesn't necessarily need to be empty, and it's as restrictive or careful as you want it to be, and it works by names. And you can, and also uses the AWS credentials, so you can also give it more strict AWS credentials. One other thing, generally speaking, for Terraform testing, for Terraform destroys in CICD, there's this unknown flag that's really valuable when you're working with Terraform in a CICD context. So in CICD with Terraform, pretty much the best practices, right? You generate a plan, you store the plan as an artifact, you ask for approval, you gain approval, you apply the plan. For destroy, you want the same workflow, but what most companies end up doing is they just call Terraform destroy. And that's actually not the right way of doing it, if you ask me. So Terraform docs on plan, there's an argument you pass to Terraform plan to generate a plan for destroy. So what you run is actually Terraform plan -destroy, and it generates a Terraform plan for destroying all the resources. And now you can have that same workflow that you typically want when you're destroying resources. Now for your specific case of this ephemeral EC2 instance that you're spinning up to run these tests, I don't think you maybe want to have that overhead of approving the destruction. But if you're destroying other environments, I highly recommend that this flag when you're doing the terraforming.
Yep. Cool.
So we're gonna go over Cloud Posse's testing infra in about 25 minutes here after the regular office hour session. But the other big win for us, honestly, has been using TerraTest. TerraTest is a library for Golang that lets you do tests with the full power of Go and all the libraries for that, so that you can validate your expected outcome. If anything fails, it calls destroy for you. But it's only as good as Terraform is, right? So if Terraform fails to destroy, or if your Go app segfaults for some reason, this might never get called. All right, let's see. Any other thing you wanted to add to that, Andrew?
Nope.
All right. Okay, best practice, okay, we covered that. Okay, then Matt Gowie had a question on basically soliciting the community's feedback on using Drone CI. Anyone on the call have recent experience using Drone CI, positive, negative, inconsequential? Doesn't matter, speak up.
Yeah, I have some experience using Drone CI.
Awesome. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, so we've been using Drone CI basically for about 2-3 years. Last year, we had like a very bad outage with it. Well, it was not because of us. Well, kind of. It was because Bitbucket changed their APIs basically without any notice. So basically, Drone CI is very tightly integrated with Bitbucket. So because of that, we had to migrate all of our drone clusters like in 2 or 3 days. So it was like working 24/7 in order to migrate that. Well, it was basically not drone's fault. Basically, it was mostly Bitbucket fault. The overall experience has been a good.
Oh, we lost you, Santiago.
Yeah, we might have lost him.
I'm gonna send a message to Slack here, or not Slack, but chat. All right. Well, we can pick that back up. All right. In the meantime, have there been any other questions that have popped into your mind? Let me check the office hours channel. I think other things were posted there. Terraform currently does not support recreation of resources if the dependent object is changed or recreated. I guess I would need to open up this link here to see what you're saying. Are you saying that just using passing arguments between your resources isn't enough to trigger the change?
Hi, Eric. When a dependent object is recreated, you expect that the dependency creates all objects from the beginning, but it does not work like that. For example, for example, a null resource, if you change a value in trigger, then null resource is recreated, right?
Yeah, correct.
But in all other resources, there is no way to create a resource.
Oh yeah, no, you got to use the hack you're talking about with the null resource triggers, and then make the dependencies depend on a value from the null resource. Now,
yeah, but it doesn't work like that. I mean, all other resources keeps their status. They're not recreated. I have made a research on this, and there's no way for recreating a resource right now in Terraform by not manually destroying it and recreating it.
I'm skeptical because I don't think we've been bit by this. We've been doing a lot of Terraform, but I confess that I'm doing a little bit less personally these days. Maybe others on the call have more insights on that. I know we're passing triggers between modules has been our escape hatch anytime we need to ensure that a dependent resource is recreated.
So you mean that a dependent resource, when a dependent resource changes, the dependent object is recreated, right?
Well, so it needs to have an output that the other module consumes. But obviously you can't create cycles, so it needs to be a directed graph.
Dependency only works in first recreation. When, for example, a dependent object is recreated, then the other objects keeps same. They're not touched. Do you understand what I mean? So, for example, a guy proposes that a life cycle term should be proposed for in future Terraforms, like for example, replace on change life cycle term can be put in future Terraforms that imitates the trigger functionality to all resources. But now it's not possible. You just have to taint that resource to recreate it. So the only way is
precise
maybe
example though, because the problem it could be one of these things where we're trying to solve the strategy, the attempted strategy, but not the actual problem you want to accomplish. So what it is you want to accomplish, and then let's talk about what the strategy or maybe other strategies.
Okay. For example, now let me talk about my specific situation. I'm working with Kubernetes, Terraform Kubernetes modules. For example, when you create a service and with a cluster IP, not load balancer, it creates that feature. And then when you want to change the property type to load balancer, then it modifies the resource, not recreates it, because what I want is not to modify it, but recreate it, because when it modifies, the module does not output load balancer ingress. It does not output the AWS load balancer ingress. So you have to recreate it. You have to force Terraform to create it, but you cannot force it programmatically. You just have to taint the resource, and then it recreates it, and makes a problem. So what you have to do is change the name of the module. So Terraform does not propose a solution for this right now, forcing recreation on updating some values. Do you have any idea?
I guess I take your word on it. Maybe somebody else has more recently gone through this. Matt, maybe? I know you've been doing a lot.
Sorry, yeah, I don't have any advice here.
Okay.
Yeah, because there is no solution. Maybe in future Terraform will support this.
Yeah, that is. I mean, that sounds. I mean, that sucks. Like, it seems a very useful thing to be able to do that you'd want to be able to do there. I'll be honest, we haven't been using the Kubernetes provider, and we haven't tested the new Kubernetes provider. So this particular situation hasn't come up, but I can see where it's not just this situation that you're saying this affects more than this situation. And that's fair enough. Right, let's see, any other questions? Sorry, we're not able to answer that one. All right, I have a question about Cloud Posse Bastion and its integration to ping Slack when somebody connects. It's not working when it's used to direct connect. Also, what's the password presume? Yeah, so for the future, Slack is required. I mean, Zoom, the company, has been, the target of every security researcher with a vengeance, and require every meeting to have passwords these days. So we were forced to upgrade this Zoom to have a password. The password is SweetOps for anyone stuck in that situation in the future. As for the Bastion, so we have this Bastion container on our GitHub. It was done several years ago. It was the first one of its kind, more or less, to implement the Bastion host as a container. I think it's a great proof of concept. I think that it illustrates a great way of doing SSH if you needed to in this way, but it is a subpar solution to other solutions out there like Teleport. And frankly, we're just investing in Teleport these days. So using this Bastion, great for solving some immediate short-term requirement, but longer term, look at a real solution like Teleport for like enterprise-grade SSH. All right, that caveat aside, look, so when you're tunneling, the Bastion is just a stupid SSH container, SSH daemon running in a container, no protocol level understanding of what's going on here. And if you're tunneling through the Bastion, those other tunnels and stuff, that's all encrypted. The SSH isn't going to be able to know what's going on there. So you really got to treat it as a jump host where you jump into the host and then jump from there to other places. But that's inconvenient for other reasons. This is why, I mean, this is really like, this is a nice to have feature. It's better than like just spinning up SSH in some other way, but is it going to give you like bulletproof auditability on your SSH? Not going to happen.
Does Teleport cost you folks something? I've never heard of it. This is
Oh,
interesting
no,
just
so
to check it out.
They're also an open source kind of company. It's an open core. So if you go to
That's how it's
github.com, gravitational teleport.
Yeah, I just looked it up and linked it.
Yeah, they have an open source edition. The open source has some limitations, of course, that are to steer users into becoming a subscriber. Those limitations are predominantly around single sign-on. So the open source edition supports GitHub as an identity provider for Teleport, but you can't integrate it with like Okta or those other services unless you pony up and become a subscriber. Their pricing, to be honest, in my opinion, their pricing is better than a lot of SaaS out there. And it's not a SaaS. I mean, it's software on-prem, right?
Is it per user or is it like per instance?
Node. Yeah, unlimited. Okay. I might, don't quote me on this. I believe it's per node. Cool. And yeah, they're a good group of guys and gals. Let's see here. So let's see any other questions here. Yeah, so I don't think I answered your question, but the gist of it is you're trying to tunnel through the bastion, and you're not going to get notification events when you're going through an SSH tunnel. All right, so DIY, single sign-on, SSH. Yeah, so this is, that's a good link there too. So one of the things we wanted to achieve with the Bastion originally was single sign-on. In this case, we added a task, a utility called GitHub authorized keys. Well, okay, so this was not really single sign-on. It was basically downloading your public keys from GitHub onto the Bastion node. So that was managed. This was cool back in the day. I would do it differently nowadays. So yeah, this DIY single sign-on, maybe if that's working with OIDC, that might be cooler. Also, if you're on Amazon, I'd probably be looking into the systems manager, secure shells as well. I think there's just a lot of other solutions these days to consider.
Yeah, we're using SSH Bastion, that one, the Cloud Post, and then we're using GitHub to authenticate the users. We just add them to the correct groups, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only issue was that, yeah, I was doing a direct SSH session to the server just via the Bastion, and I didn't get any notifications. And I was just wondering if there was, where exactly was the was the detection happening that the user has connected to the Bastion? Because I was thinking I could just add, I don't know, some other check via the logs to see, okay, some user connected and that's it. Because
so
all we want is just
yeah, we have a small little patch here that the problem is it doesn't pass the original command when you have force command enabled. So we're using this force command to always force a command to run on the SSH execution, and then we use this patch to ensure we get it early on in the process. This is the other thing. I think it's a bug in SSH, or not a bug, but like I don't understand why they just don't support it, and we didn't PR it. And then what we have is let's see here. So user bin, Slack notification. So then we have just this stupid little script that just curls Slack with the message and the template to notify. And this is triggered by way of the force command. So if we look in the rootfs, and you guys see my screen, by the way? I'm not sharing. Oh, I'm not sharing. This is the wrong window. Darn it. I was going through and explaining everything and hand waving again. And No one stopped me. I do that all the time. All right, so you see, this is the Bastion container. In here, we have the scripts, and in the SSH config here, let's see, it's been ages since I looked at this, so I might not remember. Force command, yeah. So we have in the SSH config this force command that always runs. And that's how we're able to send those Slack notifications. You cannot bypass this. This is in contrast to another popular mechanism used, but is ineffective to forcing the command to run. I forget, it's documented here what that other approach is. But yeah, I don't remember. Anyways, it's not really material to what we're looking at. If I just saw it quickly, I would have. Pointed it out. I think there's a PR open that we just never merged that kind of talks about some of the gotchas here. But I don't even remember. It was by me, I thought. Oh, well, sorry. Anyways, hope that had some context. If you want to dig around the Bastion container, have at it. I recommend anybody using the Bastion container to fork it and do it, customize it to your needs. We're not investing that much into it at this time because we're not using it in our idiomatic solutions with customers. We've switched over to Teleport.
No, I think we can also switch to something else, especially if it has few nicer features.
Yeah, Teleport is just sweet. You can have like an interface. You click a button and you get a YouTube playback of the session. Not literally YouTube, but like YouTube, like a player. It's actually coming from an encrypted S3 bucket streamed to the client. But full support for TTY sessions. Also, they support kubectl, the Kube API, so you can run kubectl through Teleport and have audited logs there, and integrate that with your single sign-on provider.
Yeah, I'll check it out. First, I'll check the community edition to see if that's enough.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can also go to other versions.
Yeah.
But it's nice find.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks.
Thank you for letting me know you're using it. I'm sorry that we have.
No problem.
More help. Yeah, that's the reality of it. All right, let's see here. So looking at Slack here, see if there's any other. Any other questions here? Oh, wait, here. My question is actually a Terraform question. Resource, AWS EIP sent us. David, wait. David?
Yeah.
Oh, you want to get the timestamp into the tag?
Yeah. So I like to create, like, I guess I just call them cattle, right? So as I create new versions, I might just spin up something while another one's being destroyed. Or if I have multiple people on the team, I want to have, you get the idea.
Yeah. So I think there's an interpolation for date manipulation, but anybody have that off the top of their head?
Some of these things are just so hard to search for because the names are also generic.
Terraform interpolation date time. Let's see what we come up. Timestamp.
Oh, look at that.
What you want? Yeah. So that's you're just going to want to use the interpolation for timestamp, assuming that this is going to, okay, so this might not be the format you want, but then they have probably a way, convert the timestamp to any other formats. So you'll use timestamp, and if you don't want this format, you'll translate it using format date, and then you can use the standard date specifiers like this to get the date in any format.
Yeah. Okay, that's exactly what I was looking for.
All right, sweet. I'll link that in reply to your in office hours. Sweet. Victor, we solved one problem quickly. All right, we got another 5-ish minutes or so. Any other questions from everyone here?
Oh, no.
See if I missed anything here.
Well, no, I asked a couple of questions in Slack. I think I got some answers.
Awesome.
Let's see. Oh yeah, of course, Python 3 DNF with CentOS 7. That was strange.
Yeah. So let's see here. So what we're going to talk about or segue into here, I think I'll just keep the recording going to simplify our processes of syndicating this. Let's just say that the office hours is going to come to an end right now. Thank you everyone for sharing your questions. I hope we got you some answers. I always pick up so much from these calls and appreciate having such phenomenal attendance. I think we had about 20 people on the call today. So thank you. And feel free to share the office hours invitation with your team. You can always send them the link to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. And hope to see more of you on the call next time. So for those of you that are doing a lot with Terraform and want to stick around, I'm going to just jump into a demo or screen share of some of the things that we've done with Terraform automation testing. It's not going to be too academic. It's just going to be really just a walkthrough of what's there and answer your questions as we go. So if that sounds interesting, stick around. All right, well, let's segue into then the Cloud Posse test infrastructure walkthrough here. This is going to be off the cuff. I don't have anything prepared. I want to first talk about what we mean when we're doing this and then go into how it's been executed. So if we look at this module here, this is a great example. It's one of our more popular modules. I think it has over, shoot, what was it? Was it, I don't know, it's like 700,000 provisions or something insane like that. A lot of stars and a lot of contributors. But the challenge has been maintaining the tests on this. So what we have is the ability to do some chat ops against any pull requests. So if we look at some of the closed pull requests here, you'll see what I mean. You'll see quite a lot of comments sometimes. This is because sometimes the pull requests actually have issues that need to be fixed. So let's look at this one here. Looks like I had just a few comments. One of the things we did was rebuild the README using chat ops and then run this command test all, which does a dispatch event in GitHub Actions to another action to run it. So I guess before I get started, let me, since Andrew was the one who first actually initiated this request, I want to make sure that I understand what you want to specifically get out of this so I can address that as I go along here and not just yap away for an hour.
Sure.
Or Andrew, that was a question. Andrew, do you have some specific things that you specifically want to understand how they work, or is it just a general overview sufficient?
Yeah, I'm finding the comment in Slack that you had said. There it is. I found it. I can show you how to fix that if you'd like in TerraTest. Oh, fixing the S3 buckets, naming stuff.
Yeah. I'll get into that too. So let's see here. I'm going to see if I can do a 5-10 minute just background to get so we have this kind of on the record of why this stuff is set up the way it is. And then we'll go over specifically that fix that we did to Terraform, why we had to do it. And in doing so, we'll go over TerraTest. So TerraTest is the tool for, it's actually evolved. So it's almost just good for infrastructure testing in general. It's like a testing framework for infrastructure, not just Terraform. All right, so GitHub and testing public repos is a sad story. It's a sad story with every CI/CD platform out there. And that's because how do you run tests against code where you need integration secrets and do that in a secure and testable way? So for this reason, every CI/CD platform out there won't run automatically pull requests from forks on public repositories, because somebody could just put a command in there to exfiltrate any integration secret, just echo secret or curl secret to some paste bin out there. It won't even show up in the logs, but it'll be out there in paste bin. So that's why doing testing for infrastructure in public repositories requires chat ops, unlike doing it for your company. So in GitHub land, that means that what you do is you have like this repository, AWS ECS container definition. It has a workflow in here. So if we go into workflows, and the workflow is called chat ops, and in chat ops, we have a couple jobs that run. So these are running a fork. This is a fork of an upstream, Peter Evans. Peter Evans is like, should do a master class on writing GitHub Actions. This guy is a genius and knows every in and out of doing GitHub Actions. But for security reasons, since this is in every repository, we forked this into our own organization under our actions. It's like a synthetic fork. It's like copied and attributed to him. So here what happens is when any one of these commands run, /rebuild readme or /terraform test, it gets dispatched to this action, and this action runs. The key thing that really freaking sucks when you use dispatching and when you use chat ops is that everything is against master. It's against master because that's how we know you didn't, or somebody didn't, stick in a bad command to exfiltrate that integration secret or do something nefarious. So what happens here is we run this / command rebuild readme, or we run this / command test, and it takes a bunch of metadata and it calls the GitHub API for actions, and it passes that as a payload to the other GitHub action. So to go from there to actually see what is running, we need to jump into Cloud Posse's actions repository. So we're running actually a mono repo for our GitHub actions, so we don't have to have too many of them. Let's see here. So we dispatch to, let me close some tabs here so I'm not searching for everything that I'm doing. All right, so this is dispatching to this. All right, so that is defined then if we go GitHub Cloud Posse actions, and we go into GitHub, we go into workflows, and here are those workflows that we dispatch to. So these are basically other pipelines. So it's pipelines calling other pipelines. If we look at the test command, this is how we're running the tests for Terraform. What you can see here, here's the payload that came from the other action, and that has all the metadata that we need in order to run these tests. It has the repository that we need to test, it has the commit SHA that we need to test, it has the pull request number, it has all that information. So note that usually when you're doing CICD these days, you have your workflow running in your branch, so you can make changes to your workflows. But when you're doing chat ops like this, you're not doing that. It's disconnected and it's out of phase. So that makes everything suddenly more complicated, because the way statuses work when you're doing testing is it automatically updates for the commit that triggered that action. But in this case, we're triggering another action in another repo, so we never get GitHub statuses. So what I'm talking about there is if we look at this container definition and we look at the pull request here, you see this little status icon here. That's indicating that in this case, no checks have been run, that we're waiting on it. But if we go to a closed pull request, you'll see that we actually have checks that have run on that pull request before we merged it. So when you use chat ops, you don't get that ability. So like if I click on this here, we see 3 out of 3 checks ran. View details. So here, you see these passed. So ordinarily, your CI/CD system is able to do this for you, but not when you're doing when you're doing it by checking. So what we do, so in ChatOps, what happens is we literally check out your code. We check out the code based on the payload, another repo, and then we check out that pull request branch, and then we run the tests against that. So everything gets so much more complicated and nasty. And then you see it's so complicated because we have to update, we have to do all our GitHub status modifications. We have to update the GitHub status API for everything that's happened. This is all the stuff we take for granted when you do CI/CD in private repos and the traditional way. Anyways, so here's our pipeline. The gist of it is all the actions run in here. The other thing you don't get to see is, heck, here are all these runs. What repo? Don't know. You got to dig in here, look at the metadata, look at the output, and figure out what it ran against. Unlike when you're typically running your actions inside of your own repository. So these are some of the caveats and details. So here in this case, we're able to update the GitHub status with a link to that action. And here's the actual run. Here you can see TerraTest running. And this is a perfect segue into TerraTest. So I'm going to cover now TerraTest and what our test infrastructure looks like for that. In this case, checking out the examples. So in our Terraform modules, in the examples folder, you'll typically see some Terraform code that implements the code, and that's what we're running. Then we're checking out to see if, do we need GitHub integration secrets to run this test? Because this is Terraform in GitHub, or are we just running it on AWS? You can see how this would work if we wanted to run this against Google Cloud. We would have a check that sees if we need Google Cloud integration secrets and then do that. In this case, we also have this one here, which checks for a label. So if we add a label, that determines the type of integration secrets we need to use to run those tests. And then we post those status updates to GitHub using that container. All right, so what does this look like under the hood? I'm going to go, for an example, look at something we recently had to fix. This ties into Andrew's question earlier about like what to do about like orphaned resources that are left behind when you're running Terraform in your CI/CD pipelines. Sometimes like when those are buckets that can prevent your stuff from running again. So on Amazon and probably every cloud provider more or less, S3 buckets or object storage, those buckets are globally unique for that cloud provider, global namespace. So if your test fails and leaves a bucket laying around, you're not going to be able to run that test unless you go and manually delete it or you run AWS Nuke. So that's why we added AWS Nuke. Let's go. First of all, I'm going to do a sanity check here in our examples to make sure I'm in the right, in our test infrastructure to make sure I'm in the right example here. No, so this is not the right example. Andrew, do you remember the link I sent you or the module it was that I had you look at?
No.
I think it might have been code build or code pipeline. $12 months ago, so it's not this one. I'll search Slack otherwise. Don't find it fast enough. 8 months ago, so it's not that one. This one was not finished. All right, let's see here. So do you have state backend? Did we do it there maybe?
That's the one I just put an MR in for.
Okay.
I don't think it was the one that you guys were talking about, though.
CDN as well. Test was updated yesterday, so that looks promising. Yeah, okay, so good. I found an example here. So this is what we need to do as a company for all of our modules. We rolled out the testing in haste because as a company, Cloud Posse decided, look, we're not going to accept any 0.12 updates of our modules unless we have testing there. There's just too many changes there. We are swimming in pull requests. We cannot review fast enough if we don't have Terra tests in place for testing these contributions. And we want to accept, we really want to be inclusive of contributions. We want to accept as much as we can for as many use cases as possible, because we fundamentally believe that everyone should be version pinning. We try to keep master stable, but sometimes we mess up. Doesn't matter. Everyone's version pinning. Pinning to master was never a good idea. Don't do it. So that's been our philosophy, and Terra test is our way to get there. The problem that we have is in a lot of our modules, we did the tests a little bit more for Cloud Posse than we did for the community. So if we look at our fixtures for running the tests, so every project more or less has this examples and complete. And the idea is that this example, you should be able to run it and bring up a complete environment. We have fixtures. These fixtures are what the default settings that we're using for bringing up this environment. These fixtures are what we use Cloud Posse for testing. Unfortunately, a lot of our community is using the fixtures for kicking the tires on what we do. And if those modules have an S3 bucket, something that's universally unique, and then they get pulled in other directions, those buckets are laying around, and our testing breaks.
EG-test-CloudFront S3 CDN, that's my bucket.
Yes, exactly. So for everyone's edification, namespace is supposed to be your company's namespace or something for your project that is optimistically unique. So based on like your resources and what you're trying to do, you're probably not going to have conflicts. EG stands for example given. So that's why our namespace for all our testing is EG. And hopefully optimistically unique, unless because all of our stuff is open source, it's a problem. So this gets me to our next point, is how do we test that? So in all of our module folders, we have this, this directory called test. And there's some make files here. We do two types of testing. One is kind of just the low-hanging fruit. It's basic link checking and sanity checks against your modules. This is where we would like to augment it and add things like conf test, so we can do policy enforcement. Right now, if you go into here, we chose BATS as the testing framework, because this is kind of like, this is testing the commands that a human operator would be running to do smoke tests. It is stuff like Terraform formatting. It's trying to download the plugins. It's making sure all of your inputs have descriptions, making sure all of your outputs have descriptions. It's making sure all the modules are pinned in the convention that we use here at Cloud Posse. It's linting the Terraform code to make sure it's been formatted, stuff like that. So these are the things that we run against every module just automatically. And that's what is represented if we look here in this make file. So we clone the Cloud Posse test harness, and then we run the tests in that module. You see here the tests environment variable in the make file is using $equal. That means we can override this per module. So if, for example, some module for some reason we know we'll never pass this test, we can just override the tests by changing the environment variable tests for that module. So two types of tests we got to do. We got to smoke test the module itself, and then we got to smoke test the examples. So we're doing kind of meta testing. We're testing the tests of that to make sure that those have been formatted and are working the way we want our tests to work. You'll notice that here we have a smaller subset of tests that we're running against those. Another thing that's nice to point out is in make, you can define environment variables that are scoped to the target. Oftentimes you'll see people doing export inside the body of your target. I would say this is a better practice, is moving that outside and sticking within the native things that make supports. All right, so that's how we run those tests. And then there's the terror test. So this gets us to how did we solve that problem with global resources? What is it that we need to do to all of our modules that have that problem? And we should probably just get better about doing this anywhere, you know, everywhere else, maybe using attributes. So quick segue, or quick not the right word, quick tangent, thank you. Terraform null label. This is one of the most opinionated things about what we do here at Cloud Posse. But it's what's enabled us to have so many modules. What's happening? Every time my screen is just jumping up. All right, so all of our modules use Terraform null label. This is so we have a enforceably consistent naming convention across all of our modules. And because we nest modules inside of modules, and because modules might be invoked any number of times, we need to make sure that resource names are disambiguous. Terraform null label, when used the right way, enforces that you have your resources in consistent ways. What's nice about this is if we go into the variables file here, we got a lot of attributes here. Cloud Posse typically sticks with namespace, stage, and name. We'll accept any PR was environment was added, and I agree with it. I like it, but this was added much later in null label, so not all of our modules support it. But we'll accept any PR that adds it to our other modules. But what I wanted to point out is this one escape hatch here, and it's called attributes. This is every other thing that you need to add to the label that you want to use to disambiguate your resources. So this is the perfect escape hatch for doing testing. So if we go back over here to getting back on track into our examples here, we have examples complete here. What we do is we import math random and just do some basic way to optimistically generate a random resource name. And we do that here by first seeding the random number generator and then adding to the attributes a random number less than 1 million or 100,000. And then we load the fixtures. Then we add the vars with the attributes to override whatever fixtures are there. And then we just update our tests here. So we make sure that the bucket name now has that random attribute in it. And now our tests won't fail anymore when users are using our fixtures to provision their examples. So what else can I point out here is, you know, this defer thing here is that Terraform, the run of this helps to look at maybe this in action. So if we go back over to GitHub Actions, let's look at what a typical Terra test execution looks like. So we are here, we checked out the code, we updated the GitHub status for pending, and we run the Terra test. Maybe I make my screen, I don't know what happens if I make my screen a little bit bigger here, if you guys can see that. All right. So we see the Terraform. This is just the output generated by Terra test. This is the name of the test that we're running that's defined inside of the test. This is output from Terraform. It has all the like the helpers to automatically run Terraform init and upgrade that. So that test passed. Then we go on here and we run Terraform apply with these arguments. That is successful. We are looking at an example here of ECS container definition. This doesn't actually create any resources in this case. This is all this does is generate generate JSON that's used with ECS tasks. So in this case here, we don't expect any resources created. This is an example where we might want to have a test that makes sure, this is an easy one to just assert that nothing is created or added. That would be a nice assertion. And then here's the JSON that is produced. And then we do some basic sanity checks on the JSON. Tests are passing and everything's hunky-dory. So at a minimum, you're going to catch 80% of the problems just by running Terraform plan and apply and destroy. There are so many things that fail, that plan successfully, apply successfully, but don't destroy. And if you don't catch those early on, it becomes a nightmare in your infrastructure when you're trying to create end-to-end automation to bring up your stack in Terraform. Now, can you do more? Certainly, and I encourage it. It's just, in our case, being the sole, we are the ones that kind of rolled out 99% of all these tests. So we did the bare minimum in these cases to validate our modules, and we would love to add validations to that, but that's going to happen over time. Cool. Any questions on that? Areas you'd like to see more details on using it?
Very thorough. Good job, sir.
Thank you, thank you. The one thing I didn't show you is the console experience for that. I think I'm going to pass on that right now. But you'll more or less see the console. You'll get almost a better experience just by looking. The great thing about all of this is that we have the GitHub workflows and the actions and pipelines. So that becomes the recipe for following along and getting what we have if you want to implement this.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go in and create a PR for the backend state repo. And I mean, it looks like the only thing I'm going to have to change at all is, examples complete test.go.
Yep.
And add, 6 lines for creating a random string and then dumping it into attributes, and then I'm done.
And then updating the test to validate that.
The expectation at the end, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Also, so in this make file, so we haven't updated, there's some tech debt here even with this. Go modules have now become the norm. This was done before that. So I think that simplifies some of the stuff that we've done here. This make file is more or less boilerplate. It's copied across all of our repositories. What this does is it sets up a Go project, so you don't need to copy all this code into your Go, your Go path, which is typically where everything needs to live, I believe, or is it Go home or whatever? I forget. So we get around that with some hacks here about symlinking folders around in a structure so that we can run all of this, generate a binary in your current working directory and run that. To run the tests locally, very easy. You just need to make sure you have your AWS credentials set. So whether that's using your single sign-on with Okta or G Suite, or using AWS Vault Assume Role, or hopefully not hard-coded credentials in your AWS configs. That's all you need. And then all you need to run to do the tests is you run, let's see here, make all. Or just run make, because this is the default target, I believe. So that's how you trigger it locally, and you can iterate really quickly on that. I really recommend that versus commit push chatops/test all, because that's a very slow iteration cycle versus just running these tests locally. Well, thank you so much, Andrew, for stepping up to the plate and helping. Even like 1 or 2 pull requests here or there adds up, and
No sweat.
your contribution to the S3 bucket, to the Terraform AWS S3 state backend module will be much appreciated.
Sure. That particular one was completely for selfish reasons, but yes, definitely.
Dude, there is no shame in that. So like, if anyone on this call, for example, is a regular contributor, I'm happy to add you to our GitHub organization as a contributor. You can be invited into our channel, and you can accelerate. Basically, what I want this to do is reduce the liability for your company to use Cloud Posse's open source modules, because as a contributor, you can expedite the review process of your pull requests by being part of this group. The only criteria here that I want to enforce is that, there is a cost to us to add you to our organization. The larger this group gets, the harder it is to maintain. So I really want it to be for people who are gung-ho contributors of our modules today, as a way for them to accelerate this. So please do reach out to me on Slack, ping me if this sounds like something you'd like to be involved with. We have a channel on SweetOps where we're coordinating this process, and it's all volunteers. So it's labor of love. Cloud Posse, I forget. Cloud Posse alone spends 160 to 200 hours a month out of pocket on our open source. So that comes out of my pocket as the company's owner. But it does. But my team is definitely putting in a lot of hours there.
Yeah, I mean, there's value. If you didn't have hundreds of open source modules, none of us would probably be here right now, right? I mean, we've kind of gravitated around this open source community, so there's value in that. But we definitely appreciate the all that open source work. We know it's a lot.
It is, and it's mutual. We both, rising tide floats all boats is our belief. So the greater we all get at collaborating and reviewing, the better off we all are.
So, quick question about the chat ops and having to go to master and blah blah blah, whatever.
Yeah.
All that stuff. So like you guys used to be really heavy into CodeFresh, and I know I have a CodeFresh project for my my dad's garage container, and I was able to set up a /test command or whatever using the CodeFresh trigger, and it worked great. Like, so what's the reason for going away from something like that?
Yeah, there's a few. There was a straw that broke the camel's back. There are multiple things. So first of all, you are a owner of your organization. It's going to work just fine, or of your dad's garage. We've had a lot of problems with CodeFresh actions triggering, CodeFresh pipelines triggering on chat ops for contributors who are in a group with write permissions but are not owners of that. They vanish. They don't go. They don't trigger. So make sure that your chat ops are working on pull requests from contributors, from forks. Mm-hmm. The other thing.
So the reason why they don't work for the contributors is because they haven't set themselves as public on the chat ops on the GitHub organization. So if you go to GitHub organization members, you can say I am a private member or I am a public member, and the chat ops commands only work if you're set as a public member.
I had no idea that was it. I shake my fist.
Yeah.
No one has CodeFresh has told us that. We've escalated other times.
About 6 months ago, I actually put a PR into their docs with that stuff. So yeah, if you're a public member of my dad's garage organization, you can trigger the chat ops.
Okay. That is good. That is good. I'm glad you are past that. I'm guessing then we might have that same. I wonder if we have the same problem with contributors that I'm adding for the chat ops then, if they're public or not.
Okay.
Also,
I went and immediately turned myself public, so I never tested it.
yeah. So we have we've done that. Also, with what we're doing right now is we're not adding people as contributors. We're actually adding them to a team called contributors.
Yeah.
Because we have so many modules, I can't add everybody individually to all of them. It'd be just hard to manage from an organizational perspective. So right now I'm adding everybody to a team called contributors, and I've added all the repos related to Terraform modules to the contributors team. And then that gives them the authority to run the chat ops commands on there. I don't know for sure what I think it's going to be the same. Yeah, for CodeFresh, that might work then, so long as they flip their status to being public for Cloud Posse. Good to know.
Yeah, so if you go to org Cloud Posse people, you'll see whether someone is a public or private.
Yeah, Cloud Posse.
I think it's orgs Cloud Posse people. Just change dashboard to people in your URL bar.
Thanks.
It's like if you go down to the bottom, I'm down at the bottom and I set myself as public.
Yeah. So let's see here. Andrew Roth, public. Yeah, public. So Nitro, well, he's doing a lot and it's all working for him. So
okay, so for GitHub Actions, that must not be a factor, but it was for CodeFresh.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, that's cool. Feel like there was a follow-up. Yeah, so the other thing is, what I love about GitHub Actions is that the declaration of your webhooks is in the same document as your pipelines. So adding one file is all you need in order to set up a pipeline. So with our chat ops, by the way, Andrew, I meant to say, if you ping me, I can expedite migrating any module over to the chat ops thing here. I have a little hacky script that I just run. And
cool.
It's gonna open PR for all that.
I want to open up a PR to the docs repo with in that section that talks about how to do the conversion from CodeFresh to GitHub Actions, with just a couple more items like pinging Eric that the very final step is for Eric to run his little script to delete the CodeFresh required status and add the.
Yeah, two things. I would say first, ping Eric to see if he's available to do it. If not, here are the steps to do to open the PR, because my script does everything. It adds the pipelines, it deletes the CodeFresh pipeline, it deletes the badge, it deletes the old webhooks, it opens a PR and assigns it for review.
Oh, okay.
So
I gotcha.
It's literally just one button. I just don't want to do it to everything because this is like DOS by PR if I do it to every repo. So
I gotcha. Okay. Maybe that, I mean, the docs site make it sound like, I should go in and create a PR to do, because you gave a very nice list of instructions for.
It was a little bit that one preceded the other, and then it was so painful. Look, I feel horrible every time I ask somebody to do a bunch of menial work. And that's why I then took it upon myself just to do that thing. But I didn't do the menial work of updating the docs. So
okay.
I think it's good to document kind of the steps of how it works, because my script is really just for migrating.
Right.
But in the future, new repos, we're probably going to want to have a scaffold repository. This is an interesting question too. I want to pose to contributors and we're totally open to accepting, and we have already accepted modules from others. So we could create a template repository, for example, at Cloud Posse that could be used for onboarding additional modules, so long as they follow the convention of like the README YAML, the documented outputs, documented inputs, pass all the tests, have examples, stuff like that. So it's a little bit more rigor than a lot of modules have when they come in.
Yeah, that'd be cool. GitHub has that practically built in, right? I mean, you can assign something as a template repo.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, totally.
I should create just a Terraform.
Yeah, create a module that creates a local file or something, and just call that the template repo or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good idea. I should do that. Because part of this idea is that we've all been there where you're at a company 1 year, next year you move around, you have to re-implement all that same stuff. It's so much better if you're just pinning against something that's open source, and you can borrow on that no matter where you're at in your career. So that's how I look at what we've built here. Is this open source means of collaborating on infrastructure across organizations, even as you travel between organizations.
Yeah.
All right, so we answered that. So CodeFresh is working on the ability to be more compatible with GitHub Actions, to work like GitHub Actions. So what I'm referring to here is we go into GitHub, workflows, chat ops. Here I define the triggers right here. This is what you don't get in CodeFresh pipelines, but they're adding that. So there's going to be a lot more convergence between CodeFresh and GitHub Actions.
Versus having to configure that stuff in the trigger versus the codefresh.yaml or whatever.
Yeah, so the code there is today. So if we go, like we have a great example, we have a great pipeline or repository here called example app. And this has CodeFresh pipelines for standard release engineering process. I've updated these actually just a week ago for a demo I did. Now compare here's the build pipeline. So the build pipeline should run on any commit to master. Do you see any triggers here?
No, it's a separate part of the system.
Totally separate. And that's the problem. So in order for this to be totally useful, I find that, and doing this at the scale that we operate, it really sucks when you have to do ClickOps or use some other API for setting up your pipelines and the triggers and the hooks. You want it all defined right here. You want CodeFresh to pick that up automatically. So there is a way around this that's pretty nice. Remember what I talked about dispatch events? Well, there's and dispatch that we're using dispatches to other GitHub actions. There's a CodeFresh dispatch event. And if you use this, you can get the same behavior where you define all your triggers using GitHub Actions, but you dispatch them all to CodeFresh pipelines.
Interesting.
And those pipelines can exist in your current repo. So this means you can create a template repository that has a GitHub action with your triggers, has your CodeFresh pipeline with everything you want to do in a nice modern CICD system. Somebody literally clones that template repository and it's automatically wired up for CodeFresh.
Yeah, that's cool.
Assuming
that is cool. I can see exactly what you mean with having to go create a new trigger just using the UI or whatever. I think the CodeFresh CLI can do it.
It can, and we've done it, and we've automated all that in the past.
Yeah, so that's what I plan on doing here. I'm in the middle. My company is in the middle of a POC for CodeFresh.
Okay.
And so I'm putting together a pipeline with kind of a standard boilerplate, Spring Boot Angular web application or whatever. And the point is we have a bunch of different development teams that all have the same kind of architecture. It's a web app that's Spring Boot Angular with Gradle, or whatever. And I am going to show, I can have a single, what is the term CodeFresh uses it for? I can have a single pipeline in CodeFresh with 15 different triggers that all look at different repositories. And none of them even need a codefresh.yaml. Like they're all, and it's like, so it becomes a centralized pipeline that I control instead of they do.
Pipelines as an interface is what we call that. And totally agree with that.
So that's why I found the process of adding multiple triggers to the same pipeline really nice, but I can totally see where you're coming from, where you don't necessarily want to have to do that.
What I like also about the current approach is that users can fork our repos and it works in their environment without signing up for another service. They can use the actions and everything like that in their own org if they want to.
That is cool. Yeah.
Well, all right, that was a mouthful. I really appreciate that. Glad to hear you're continue with that other POC there. Final questions, anybody? All right. Well, just a reminder, this is going to be posted as part of the office hours recording, and we will be sharing this with the contributors later so they can get an idea of everything I shared here today, and maybe we can slice this up and send it out as a separate video too. Thanks guys for participating.
No sweat.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Thank you very much.